So here we have the two heat sinks, and I got some comments in the last video, and I also contacted the seller of these, which is Solo Mining Co. And they said in terms of actually fitting these to the Supra and the Max, you should just cut off the sides. So we're going to actually do that today, and we're going to do a comprehensive kind of overlook of how much this actually improves the heat dissipation on these devices. Because yesterday we replaced the thermal paste and then we added on the original sink, which didn't really do much in terms of the temperature. But today we are going to be adding these new ones, and hopefully we can get the temperatures down. So I have taken screenshots of what the temperatures look like on both the Supra and the Max before and after. So we're going to take them off the rig, and then we're going to fit these on. We're also going to cut off these. So let's cut off the side first, and we need to make sure that we're cutting off the right side, which would be these two. So in this kind of orientation instead of this one. And we're going to cut these off just using like a hacksaw, and then we'll show you the finished product before that and file down the edges. And then we'll take them off the rig and we'll go from there, attaching them and replacing the thermal paste again that we replaced yesterday. So here we have the finished heat sinks. We have actually bent them slightly, we hit them. I don't know if that's going to make much of a difference, mainly on two of these pins. We can try bend it back. And we've basically hacksawed off that part of it. And we've kind of rubbed it out with a file, as you can see there. So it's not as sharp to the touch. And hopefully we can just fit them on like this. So let's take them off the rig, and then let's get into replacing the thermal paste and putting them back on. Basically going to be the same thing that we were doing yesterday, but with these two heat sinks now, with the two going across. As I said, we have made recordings of what we have in terms of the temperatures, and we're going to keep the overclocks exactly the same to see if it brings down the temperatures. So let's get them off the rig, and let's take off the older fans as well. So here we have it, we have both of them taken off now, and let's just take off the fans. We do have these new fans, which we are not actually going to put on yet. I'm going to save that for another video, because if I put on the fans, it might actually affect how much dissipation of heat actually comes off. So that will be saved for another video, because we want to see just how the heatsink actually functions in terms of taking heat away. So we're going to take these all off, pop out the heatsink again, and then we're going to actually replace them with these that we have here. And hopefully it does fit across there, because you can see there it's pretty much taking the side off here so we don't hit that, and then taking the side off here, because on this one you have, let's just get this here, put it in the right orientation, you have this white thing here which might be stopping it as well. So that's the reason we took the sides off, is to get around this. And thank you for everyone that commented, and Solo Mining Co. for pointing that out. So let's get everything off, and you can see the chips again that we saw yesterday's video. As you can see, we've actually popped off the heat sinks, and it looks like we've put way too much thermal paste on there in general across the whole thing. And that was probably a mistake by my part. We need to use a little less thermal paste, I believe, because look, you can see how much is surrounded and how much is left on there. So definitely we need to use way less thermal paste this time, maybe about half of what we used yesterday, but it's good to see under it to see how the thermal paste actually functioned or squished against the chip. So we have to clean that up again, and then our next step is adding these new heat sinks that we have here. And then we are going to get them up and see how much of a difference it makes. So let's clean this off, and then we'll get on to that. And it's looking like we use way too much thermal. Let me just try to get this to focus on the actual chip. So that is for, I believe, the Max, and then this one, we still need to do a little bit of cleaning on this. But you can see that that is for the Supra as well. So only this small chip that's in there. And it is really small, like if you take off the zoom, you can see how small it actually is there. So let's get these actually put on, and let's put some thermal paste on them. We're going to use way less this time, and hopefully we can get some good results from this. So let's put that on. We're just going to stick the heat sinks on, stick the fans back on, and we'll come back after we stuck them all on, and then we'll hit it up onto the rig. So there we have it. We have our 2 heat sinks fitted on. They fit pretty much okay. Obviously that one's bent a little bit, and we have this one as well. It's already bent as well, but I think it's going to be okay for this. It doesn't really matter too much. You can see the 2 screws on the back, and I've given it a bit of space, if you can kind of see that there. So I don't know still how much space is supposed to be left, but I'm assuming you don't want it super tight onto the chip there, but you can see there again, that's how much space we've left in between. So it's basically as big as the chip rises out, and you don't want it too tight on the back, just because you don't want to crush the chip in the bottom. So let's get these up on the rig and let's get them running. Hopefully they start up. I don't see why they wouldn't. But I also saw a comment as well saying about the fact that you can replace the chips in there. I do have extra chips that we could put in there if one of them kind of isn't pulling the amount of hash rate that we're looking for. And we can actually take one of the chips off, solder in another one. But you have to make sure that it's actually the right board, because I believe if you put a gamma in, you know, a Supra, it doesn't actually work. So let's get these back up onto the rig, and I think we'll just bring it over to the computer and see the difference between the two. So there we have the rig here. As you can see, all of the heat sinks all fitted on, and the last one that we did yesterday in yesterday's video, I think the temperatures have actually come down. So you see it's 45 degrees when it was at around 60 at those overclocks. We're getting around 1.3 terahash there, and good efficiency at 12.89. These two, let's just plug them in and see what temperatures it's given us. Let's let them run for a little bit so we can get kind of an average figure, and then we'll come back with basically the results of these heat sinks. So if you want me to test any more heat sinks, please leave them in the comments below. These are just ones that I saw and I could get quickly in the UK. But if you want me to test maybe some copper heat sinks or the ice towers that we see, please let me know in the comments as well, and we'll do a comparison video over there. So let's bring it over to the computer now. So we've been letting them run for quite a bit. It doesn't actually seem like we're getting anything better, if even the fact this one's very, very low at 468 gigahash, and it's been kind of on that range for a while. I may have damaged the chip on the Supra here by adding that new heatsink on, but I do not know. We are going to try something different though. So the max version seems to be okay, 45 degrees. So we have our comparisons here. This is what the max was before I took it off. It was mainly hovering around here before this jump upwards, but you can see 45 degrees, 15 watts, same overclocks that we're looking at here. So it hasn't really made a difference in terms of the heatsink. And when we go over to the Supra, it looks like it hasn't actually improved it, it's made it worse. So I don't know what's necessarily going on there, because it normally doesn't host this low. It normally does climb up to what it's supposed to go to. I have some theories around this, which we're going to test out in this video. Mainly the theory around overclocking the Supra. So if you haven't watched this video, we tried to get a Supra to hit 1 terahash. And one of the main goals with that was that we plugged in a different power supply and basically ran the fans at 100%. So the reason that I'm saying this is maybe because we need to take it above this 12 watts of heat. So we're currently pulling 15, but in this video we're pulling around 22.4. So maybe we need to take it above this 12 watts of heat, as these sinks are capable of soaking up 24 watts of heat. So maybe we need to take it to there to see a real big difference. So we have the figures already. 57 degrees is kind of what it looks like, and I have the overclocks. It's 650 at 1350, so you can use the exact same fan speed of 80%, and we can see if it makes a difference when we're pulling, 25 watts on the Supra. For the max version, it doesn't really necessarily look like it's done anything. If anything, efficiency has actually gone down. We're actually going to unplug the gamma. It actually worked for the gamma. So the heatsink is actually
reducing the heat quite a lot. It was normally at 60, sitting around that range, but now it's at 46. So for the Gamma, it definitely works. But for the Supra, I just don't know why it's not working necessarily in terms of the hash rate's not even climbing up to expected when it normally does, or normally posts above it. And for the Max, nothing really has changed. I think the efficiency is worse overall. But this is what we had for the Supra. And it was 634 gigahash, 14.9 watts, 46 degrees. Efficiency is around 2350. When we go back to the Supra, you can see efficiency is worse, hash rate is worse. The temperature is 2 degrees lower, I believe, if we click in here. So 46, temperature is 2 degrees lower, or even 1 degree lower, and we're putting a little more watts. So I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to plug in a different power supply for the Supra, and we're going to try overclock it to the same overclocks that we had in this video and see how it compares to what we're seeing here. So we've just plugged that new power supply in, as you can see there, and we now need to take it to the same overclocks that we had. So if we go here, it was 650 and it was 1350, I believe. If we go back, yeah, so 1350, and the fan was set at 80%. So we have that here. We can go to settings and we need to inspect this to make sure. So exact same experiment, fan, we need to put it to 80%, and then we just click save and restart, and hopefully we can get something in terms of an improvement. But it's always good to experiment with these because you never know what is actually going to work. It definitely worked on the Gamma, that's the thing. The Gamma has definitely decreased in terms of the temperatures overall. It was sitting about 60, now it's down to 46. So that's always good that the heatsink works for that. Maybe it's because we only have 2 connectors. As we saw at the start of the video, we sawed off the 2 to fit it in. But maybe it's because it hasn't got 4 points of contact. It's not really doing much in terms of heat dissipation. It's just as good as the other ones with 2 points of contact. So we are running this right now. 48 degrees is what we're looking at. And we had 53, but after a while, I believe, it climbed up to 57, and that was kind of where it was bumping out at around 900 gigahash. So we're at 1.08 terahash at 49 degrees. We'll have to see if this keeps going on. So let's give it a little bit, and let's come back when it's submitted a bunch more shares on the network, and we'll see what the figures are looking like. So after letting it run for a while, we can see our results here. We have around 800, but it's stabilizing a little bit above that. It's jumping between 700 to around 1 terahash for a couple of shares there. And temperature is only 52 degrees. So it has actually made an improvement from 57. As we saw on the website, it says it's capable of moving from 5 to 10 watts of heat. And that's kind of accurate, I guess, because 7 minus 2 gives us 5. So 5 watts of heat. 5 degrees of heat, technically, it does take it away. So the findings of this, because we saw it on the Gamma as well, is mainly that these heat sinks work better at a higher temperature or higher watts pulled. They don't really make too much difference on lower watts, I think. Probably to do with the fact that it doesn't necessarily need it at those lower watts, but at the higher watts, it needs quicker heat dissipation, and the gap gets bigger as you go higher on the watts. So we have the exact same overclock settings, and as you can see, around 901 gigahash at 22.4 watts. Currently we're sitting at 21.5 watts. A little bit less gigahash, but the heat is also a little less as well. So overall, I think from looking at this at least, and looking at the Gamma, how it functions on that, these heat sinks are really good if you're wanting to really go for higher overclocks, because they'll take the temperature down much more at those higher watts that you can hit. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if you're just putting it on, let's for example say the Bitaxe Max. I don't think it's going to do too much, but definitely for the Gamma and the Supra, recommended Gamma is probably the best improvement I've seen. I think we had nearly over 15 degrees drop in temperatures, and that's pretty big in terms of how much heat dissipation you can get and how much more overclocking you can do on these machines. So definitely would recommend them. As I said, link in the description if you want to go buy one from Solo Mining Co. I'm not affiliated, but it is a good heatsink. Wouldn't recommend for the Bitaxe Max, only for the Supra and the Gamma. Also, let me know what kind of heatsinks you want to see next on the channel, and anything that you want to do, experiment with overclocks, stuff like that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you like the video and subscribe for more content like this.